Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh! Who lives in...
Eugene Harold Krabs, otherwise known as Mr. Krabs, is the greedy owner and founder of the Krusty Krab. The restaurant, prominently known for its success built upon the popularity of its signature sandwich, the Krabby Patty. The formula to the Krabby Patty, of course, being a highly guarded secret. Mr. Krabs has an interesting reputation around the community, mostly known for being very greedy and sometimes deceitful in an effort to make a quick buck, yet people still continue to trust and support him, probably due to him being the owner of the Krusty Krab, I imagine. He tends to be rather selfish, as we've seen him bet his employees in poker games in an effort to make money, and he even went as far as selling SpongeBob's eternal soul to the Flying Dutchman for a whopping 62 cents. Mr. Krabs values money more than anything in this world, including his own well-being, except for his daughter Pearl, whom he actually seems to be a pretty decent father towards, except for being really stingy when it comes to spending money on anything, and Mrs. Puff, who was his girlfriend for a brief moment and would cause him to have brief lapses in his greediness. Mr. Krabs was born in 1942 and he served in the Navy in the 1960s. We're not certain whether or not he actually saw combat, but we do know that after the war he fell into a depression, and the only thing that brought him out was opening the Krusty Krab. In a sense, he kind of has an inspiring story if you take it at face value. However, what if I told you that Mr. Krabs is not that innocent? He actually has a dark history of breaking laws and committing some really serious crimes. Mr. Krabs is a character that we've seen on multiple occasions do some really questionable things in order to cover up for himself. That's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna check out a few episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants where Mr. Krabs breaks some serious laws and makes some really questionable decisions. But first, really quick, I just wanted to say thank you so much for checking out this video. As of the time of me planning this video, we are super close to 80,000 subscribers, and I'm just absolutely floored. I feel so lucky to get to build such a cool community of awesome people. I really appreciate every single one of you, and I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for clicking on this video and for being part of my YouTube journey. And with that being said, let's get right into it. The first episode we're going to check out is the Season 3 episode, Nasty Patty. This episode starts out with a dark and stormy night up above Bikini Bottom.
It's nights like these that remind me of the time Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob thought they killed the health inspector. It was a bright and sunny morning.
We see the health inspector arrive at the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs is taking a money bath and he catches a whiff of the health inspector, which causes him to panic. He warns SpongeBob that if he finds any violations, he's gonna shut down the Krusty Krab.
But Mr. Krabs, there's no reason to worry. The Krusty Krab is the most perfect place in the universe.
You really haven't got any brains at all, have you, son? Just go out there and give him what he needs. Pour on the charm. Sweet talking.
What can I get for you, handsome?
We're doomed!
The health inspector orders one of everything on the menu, and we get a nice little montage of SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs just stuffing the health inspector's mouth with food.
And did the voluptuous inspector enjoy his meal?
So far, so good. I just need to try a plain Krabby Patty, and my inspection will be finished.
He says if he gets one more Krabby Patty, he'll pass us for the inspection.
We're in the clear!
We interrupt this can-can for a special news bulletin. Be on the lookout for a man who's been passing himself off as a health inspector in order to obtain free food.
Free food!
SpongeBob suggests that they tell their health inspector about the phony inspector, but Mr. Krabs just assumes that this guy is the phony inspector. He decides that if this guy wants a Krabby Patty, they're gonna give him one.
You're dancing with the crab man now. Join me, boy, or you're fired.
It doesn't seem right, but it feels so good. Seahorse radish, the gnarliest stuff in the ocean.
Oh, hold on. I've got a jar of toenail clippings in my office.
Oops, I dropped it in the toilet.
Well, fish it out, and I'll dry it with me gym socks. Why, that's the most diabolical Krabby Patty ever spawned.
SpongeBob brings it to the health inspector, and when he goes to take a bite, a fly ends up landing right in his throat.
Listen, he ate it. Oh, look at him choke. Look at him suffer. Did you see that, boy? Oh, man, that look on his face.
As they laugh at him choking, a news broadcast comes on explaining that the imposter inspector has been caught, so if a health inspector came to your restaurant and he wasn't that guy, then he's real.
I'm sure our guy will understand if we just explain the situation. Then we can all have a good laugh about it.
I don't think he'll be laughing, boy.
Why, sir?
Because that patty killed him.
Mr. Krabs, what are we gonna do?
What's this wee stuff? You fed him the tainted patty. Looks like it's the stony lonesome for you.
But you told me to give it to him.
Well, you could have talked me out of it.
You're right, Mr. Krabs. I'm guilty. I'll never survive in prison. Come up the floor with me.
Get a hold of yourself, boy.
Mr. Krabs says that they gotta get rid of the body before anyone sees it, so they leave and SpongeBob drags the corpse as Mr. Krabs leads the way with a lantern and a shovel. Once they find a good spot, Mr. Krabs demands that SpongeBob start digging. He digs until he hits a big rock, and Mr. Krabs tells him to toss it out.
Where am I?
Something ain't quite right.
What do you mean, Mr. Krabs?
His head's sticking out.
Sorry, Mr. Krabs. I thought he might need some air.
They don't need air where he's going.
SpongeBob suggests that maybe they should say a few words on his behalf as he starts to cry his eyes out. Mr. Krabs interrupts him, saying that no one can ever know about this, and this has to be their secret to take to their graves.
It'll be the end of you, it'll be the end of me, and worst of all, it'll be the end of me.
Stop right where you are. I'm afraid we're gonna have to arrest the two of you.
Mr. Krabs, I'm too young to go to jail.
And what would be the charges?
For not being at the Krusty Krab to whip us up a couple of delicious Krabby Patties.
Laugh, boy.
It starts storming all of a sudden, and rain falls heavily as the corpse that they barely buried resurfaces and slides down the hill as SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs are putting their shovel in the cop car.
We're just getting a lift back to the Krusty Krab. I need you to stay calm and don't lose your cool, understand?
Can I lose my cool now?
Why? Put him in the trunk, boy. I'll keep them cops busy.
What's the holdup back there?
The boys handling it.
Captain, get away!
SpongeBob enters the back of the cop car very apprehensively as he's just visibly freaking out. Mr. Krabs attempts to talk in code to SpongeBob, telling him that when they get to the Krusty Krab, he wants him to take the shovel out of the back of the cop car and put it in the freezer.
Understand?
I understand, Mr. Krabs, but what do you want me to do with the box?
Bottles of soda! Bottles of soda, same thing. Put them in the freezer.
We cut on over to the Krusty Krab where SpongeBob is dragging the corpse around back when he comes up to the back door and finds it locked, leaving him no choice but to go inside and face the cops and Mr. Krabs.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! I thought you were out back taking care of that shovel.
Well, the back door was locked, so I came around here. So if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go put my hat in the freezer now.
Okie dokie, SpongeBob.
Is that kid okay?
He's acting a little funny.
Funny? Oh, yeah. He's a real cut-up, that one. He knows how to keep the crew in stages. Good one, boy. Always on that one. There's no off on his funny switch.
SpongeBob walks through the door and his hat falls off, and Mr. Krabs, in a panic to cover SpongeBob's tracks, hits the cash register and it flies open as he declares it open cash register night, and that the first two customers get all the money in the cash register. Just then, Dispatch radios one of the officers to tell them about two guys who are burying a body up on Shallow Grave Road, so he has to cancel the patties. The other cop gets sad because she wanted a soda, so Mr. Krabs gives her one on the house.
Hey, there's no ice.
Ice? Ice? You want ice? Is that what you want? You want ice? Is that what you want?
The dark deed you requested is done, sir.
I'll get it myself. Ice is in the freezer, right?
There is no ice. There's There's never been any ice. Ice is just a myth.
Step aside. You people act like you've committed a murder.
Okay, I confess. SpongeBob killed him.
What? You can't pin this whole rap on me.
He was insane, out of control.
The two continue blaming each other as they confess to killing a health inspector and stuffing his body in the freezer. The cop opens the freezer and finds it empty.
Is this some kind of a joke?
Yeah, a joke.
Say, maybe he turned into a zombie and walked out.
Hey, you guys.
Take that, you zombie!
I'll take it from here. Die, zombie!
After beating him senseless, they realize that this isn't a zombie and that it's just a normal health inspector. The health inspector says that at the risk of being hit again, it's his pleasure to pass the Krusty Krab, and the bunch celebrate with what Mr. Krabs calls Krabby Patties at half price, but not really.
Oh boy, I'd like a Krabby Patty.
Well, that's the story. Yes, they are all idiots, aren't they?
Now, there's an awful lot for us to pick apart about this episode. Before we dive into the dark nitty-gritty, I have to bring up that scene where SpongeBob is dragging the body around the back of the Krusty Krab. I can't help but notice that the Krusty Krab sign has a green light on it, and I don't think I've ever seen it have that green light before. It's a minor, small detail, but definitely one that caught my attention. Moving on from there though, this episode, just as a whole, is really messed up. That news report could not have come on at a worse time. Naturally, it just had to play as they had a health inspector in their restaurant. First of all, it's messed up that Mr. Krabs saw that news report and just automatically assumed that the health inspector they had was the culprit. Like, this guy didn't really give them any reason to believe that he was a liar. I mean, I guess just ordering one of everything on the menu is a little bit sus, but it is what it is. Who am I to judge how this guy does his job? But like, armed with that information and having made the decision that the health inspector in his restaurant was the imposter health inspector, Mr. Krabs just automatically decides to get extreme revenge. He straight up starts putting volcano sauce on the patty and tells SpongeBob that he needs to join him or he's gonna be fired. Which just resulted in SpongeBob doing just as diabolical things to the Krabby Patty as Mr. Krabs did. I do have to point out really quick that after they thought the health inspector took a bite of the patty and that news report came on with a picture of the real imposter health inspector, I just couldn't help but laugh. This guy kind of looks like the Tattletale Strangler, just a little bit. Like, not quite, but you can tell that much like the Tattletale Strangler, they drew this fish literally to look like some sort of hardened criminal. I just thought that it was kind of funny. Imagining this guy walking into a restaurant and pretending to be the health inspector to get free food, which, might I add, isn't really the most severe of crime. I mean, it's just theft technically, or maybe theft of services, which is a crime, yes, but still, compared to strangling tattletales, it's a very petty crime. I'm just blown away though by Mr. Krabs' ability to throw all rationality out of the window and just assume that their health inspector was the imposter. He went straight off the deep end and was ready to feed this guy a patty that would probably land him in the hospital for a substantial amount of time. I mean, look at that thing. It straight up scrubbed the toilet and has toenail clippings on it. In all reality though, when we dissect this, the crime that was committed is a hard one to pin down just a little bit. They are a licensed food establishment that purposefully made a disgusting health code violation of a burger with intent to feed it to a health inspector. However, the health inspector didn't actually eat it and didn't choke on it. He choked on a fly that was buzzing around the burger, so in all reality, Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob didn't actually attempt to murder him, though they did attempt to feed him something disgusting. It's like the intent to do harm was there, but they didn't actually do any harm, considering the guy knocked himself out while choking on a fly, which was kind of out of SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs' control, arguably. However, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs did end up dragging this guy's corpse out to Shallow Grave Road and attempted to bury him alive. I guess technically they end up knocking him out with a rock and with the trunk of the car in the process, which could be seen as assault, though it was unintentional and mostly at the fault of negligence. But more than anything, the attempt to bury him was the most heinous of all, in my opinion. Say if they really did kill this guy, this right here would be the act of them disposing of the body with hopes of it never being uncovered. But since he isn't dead, This is actually just them, in all reality, trying to bury him alive. They're lucky that SpongeBob did such a terrible job and that this guy's body ended up sliding all the way down to them. If they had really buried him properly, he definitely wouldn't have survived this episode. Now, Mr. Krabs forcing SpongeBob to mess with the health inspector's food, then forcing him to cover up what they thought was a murder, is just completely heinous and vile. It's a true testament to just how far Mr. Krabs is willing to go to cover up his own tracks and stay out of trouble. I can't help but question the police officers in this episode, though. They literally didn't find anything questionable about what was going on out there, and that kind of circles back to Mr. Krabs' reputation like we talked about earlier. Like, he's known for being greedy and willing to do anything to make a buck, but somehow people still trust him, likely because he's the owner of the Krusty Krab. This is a good example of just that. These cops stumbled upon them walking on Shallow Grave Road with a shovel and didn't even question anything because they know them as the owner and fry cook of the Krusty Krab. This was such a massive red flag for those cops to come upon, and they just blissfully turned a blind eye. A full-blown corpse slid down the hill and right up to their car, and these cops didn't even notice. They only ended up finding out about the crime because SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs were so nervous that they ratted each other out. These cops were honestly just kind of buffoons, and it's hilarious that they portrayed them that way in this episode. Like, these cops would have likely gotten awards for cracking the case on an attempted murder, but they were too busy turning a blind eye to notice anything out of the norm. In this episode, Mr. Krabs was super quick to break the law, and it was honestly a little bit alarming. He just showed completely sociopathic tendencies and his want to poison the health inspector and forcing SpongeBob to partake. It was just, overall, a really shocking and crazy episode, but one massive question I have throughout all of this is, where was Squidward? Usually he's the one working the front counter, but I'm pretty sure we didn't see him at all in this episode. In the beginning, they show us the front counter where Squidward usually is, and he's nowhere to be found. I'm not sure if he had the day off or what, but I'm curious to see how differently the events here could have played out if he was in the mix. Would he have maybe helped dispose of the body, or would he have just ran away at the start of all this and not taken part? Who knows? I will say though, this episode is doing a great job of scratching that itch to want to get into Crew Crime stuff for me. I've honestly been kind of contemplating it recently, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really into true crime, but like, I'm so deep in the realm of cartoons that I'm like, would you guys even want to see that kind of thing? Or would it be best for me to upload that to like a completely new channel? Either way though, this episode was a fantastic opportunity to blend the true crime world and that of the early 2000s cartoons, and I can appreciate that. Now, moving on from there though, the next episode that we're going to check out is the Season 3 episode, One Krabs Trash. This episode starts out with Mr. Krabs setting out a sign advertising fine antiques for sale. He lays out a nice blanket, then goes right over to his neighbor's trash can and dumps it out on the blanket. He grabs all the other neighbors' garbage cans and dumps them out as well, and after a spray of some fresh scent, he's ready to open for business.
See anything you like?
Yeah, I'll give you $1.50 for this umbrella.
$1.50 for that? But it's an antique. It belonged to a queen. $10.
$10? It's full of holes.
It was the Queen of Switzerland.
A queen, you say? That's right. Wait a second. They don't have a queen.
Okay, Mr. Bargain Hunter. $5.
Deal!
Mr. Krabs celebrates $5 made as SpongeBob and Patrick walk up licking some lollipops. Mr. Krabs ends up conning Patrick at a $7 for a soup ladle that's actually a turned inside-out toilet plunger that Patrick threw out a few days ago. Meanwhile, SpongeBob ends up enamored by a soda-drinking hat with number 1 on it.
There's only been a handful of number 1s in the entire history of forever.
That's right, SpongeBob, and you're one of them. This hat says, "Hey, I'm number 1, and I let gravity do my drinking. This hat was made for you, boy. You were born to wear this hat. A perfect fit, eh, son?"
Oh, thank you, Mr. Krabs. Thank you for bringing us together. How can I ever repay you?
With $10.
All I have is 5.
SpongeBob runs around and searches his house for change and comes back with 68 cents as he offers to let Mr. Krabs take the difference from his paycheck. Mr. Krabs agrees, telling SpongeBob that he looks great in the hat. Then, this happens.
Excuse me, sir, but are you the purveyor of this curio stand?
I understand you're selling this rare novelty drink hat.
Fresh out.
Let me explain. I'm prepared to give you $500 for that drink hat.
Not so fast. I'll give you $1,000 for such a hat.
I'll give you $100,000 in cash for said hat.
Sir, I'll give you $1 million for that hat.
Mr. Krabs finds SpongeBob blowing bubbles with the drinking hat, and he plans to do whatever he needs to get the hat back. He tries telling him that the hat makes him look like a girl.
Am I a pretty girl?
Oh, well, you're beautiful. All right, now give me the hat back.
But Mr. Krabs, you said it yourself. I was born to wear this hat. I don't want to give it back. I can't part with this hat now. Not after all we've been through. Thanks, Mr. Krabs. I'll call you Hattie. And that's when you showed up.
Ah, forget it. And you're not beautiful either.
Mr. Krabs comes back later with a bag full of hats that he got from a novelty hat shop. He's got the air-conditioned hat, the juicer, and the foxy grandpa. He offers to trade SpongeBob all of those hats for his soda drink hat, but SpongeBob refuses. That's when Mr. Krabs decides that he's gonna have to scare it off of him.
This'll scare him. Oh!
Oh my gosh! A floating shopping list! Ah!
I'm not a shopping list. I'm a ghost.
The ghost tells SpongeBob that he's the ghost of soda drink hats, and he's here to tell SpongeBob that the hat he has is cursed, and it used to belong to a guy who's dead now.
What guy?
Smitty something.
Smitty what?
Smitty Werben Jägerman Jensen.
He must have been #1.
#1 in Boogieland.
The ghost says that SpongeBob must return the hat to its rightful owner immediately, and after questioning it for a second, SpongeBob appears out of nowhere behind Mr. Krabs, covered in dirt and carrying a shovel.
Oh, I was just returning the cursed soda drink hat to its original owner, Smitty Werben Jägerman Jensen.
What? There is no Smitty Werben Jiggerman Jensen.
Sure there is. He's buried out in Floater Cemetery.
How did I just did it? I would. Give me that shovel. I was there.
It was his hat, Mr. Krabs. He was #1.
We cut over to the cemetery where Mr. Krabs is walking through and getting spooked by all the scary sights to be seen in the boneyard.
What's that? It's Squidward. What's he doing here? Here lie Squidward's hopes and dreams. What a baby. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Gotta find Smitty What's-a-Gypster.
Mr. Krabs continues to look around for the grave of Smitty Werben Jägerman Jensen, and he eventually finds it. He stops for a second and questions himself.
Am I really gonna defile this grave for money? Of course I am!
Mr. Krabs digs until he finally reaches the casket, and he opens it up to find a fish skeleton wearing the soda drink hat. He takes the hat, ripping the head off the skeleton in the process, and he jumps out of the grave successful.
Hey man, that's my hat. Give it back.
What? No way. Just crawl back into your hole, Bone Boy. Go ahead, play dead.
I guess I'm gonna have to take it from you.
Yeah, right. You and what army?
Only the army of the living dead.
Oh, no! I've seen this on The Late Show. You ghoulish fiends hold me down and take turns nibbling on my innards. Then you eat my brain and leave my body for the buzzards.
That's disgusting. We just want the hat back.
Mr. Krabs refuses, and he ends up ripping the head off of a swordfish skeleton, and he uses it as a sword as he battles an army of undead fish until morning. Hat in hand, Mr. Krabs runs all the way home, and when he arrives, he finds the same group of high roller hat collectors still hanging out in his front yard.
Well, I got it. The rare novelty soda drink hat. Let's start the bidding at $1 million.
Yeah, you want that all at once?
They explain that someone found a whole warehouse full of those hats, and that they're virtually worthless. Just then, SpongeBob walks by in a hat that claps when you pull on a string, and the group of collectors run after him, offering him $1 billion for the hat, which is where the episode ends. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this episode hits a little bit different than the last one did. There's a lot more funny gags in this episode than there was in the last one in my opinion. Just the fact that Mr. Krabs is selling his neighbor's garbage as antiques in and of itself is hilarious and so fitting for his character. But I just about died when that guy questioned the holes in the umbrella and he said that it belonged to the Queen of Switzerland, the joke referencing of course the holes in Swiss cheese. It was kind of a corny dad joke, but that kind of humor is right up my alley, and I just love it. Another thing I really enjoyed about this episode is the graves that were in Floater Cemetery. Some of them appeared serious, and a bunch of them were just gag headstones, and I found that hilarious, even as a child. I do gotta point out how crazy it is that all of this played out the way it did. Mr. Krabs was just trying to convince SpongeBob to give him the hat back, and he randomly threw out the name Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen, who turned out to actually be a real person who was buried in the cemetery nearby, and apparently who actually was number one. My question though is, when Smitty came back to life and wanted to claim the hat back, he said that it was his hat, but was it actually his hat before all this happened? Or is he just saying that it's his hat because SpongeBob gave it to him? I guess I'm just really wondering if Mr. Krabs made up this story that ended up actually being true, or if Smitty just went along with it when SpongeBob gave him the hat. Who knows, but I do gotta say that the events at the end of the episode are kind of messed up. Mr. Krabs was so greedy and selfish that he went all the way to the cemetery and dug up a grave in order to sell an item that he grave robbed. In the process, he killed literally hordes of zombie fish. Not only did he desecrate a grave and vandalize the cemetery, but he killed a ton of the undead in the process. And like, I get blindly killing them if they're just mindless, brain-hungry monsters, but they seemed willing to talk and work things out, or at least Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen was. But Mr. Krabs was so gung-ho about his $1 million hat that he was willing to murder anyone he needed to in the process. And that's just totally messed up. But the icing on the cake, after he did all of that, which might I add is definitely criminal activity, the hat ended up being completely worthless. Mr. Krabs straight up defiled a grave and did all of this stuff literally for nothing. I mean, it serves him right, considering his selfish intent, that's for sure. This episode is just messed up. In all reality, murdering a health inspector is a lot worse than defiling a grave in my opinion. It simply boils down to people over property. On one hand, you have taking someone's life, and on the other hand, you have desecrating the property of someone who's already dead. But still, both of these episodes are evidence of Mr. Krabs' willingness to throw anyone under the bus in order to get his way, or to cover himself, or even just to make some money. I did want to point out that there are a few honorable mentions that I have to bring up here. First of all has to be the banned episode Midlife Crustacean that I talked about in another video. In this one, Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, and Patrick all break into a woman's house to take her underwear out of her drawers and do God knows what with it, but joke's on him because it ends up actually being his own mother's house unbeknownst to him. I leave that as an honorable mention because yes, it's technically illegal, but that's an episode that I've already covered, and he wasn't the leader of the panty raid, it was SpongeBob and Patrick. He was just kind of along for the ride. The other honorable mention is the Season 4 episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. In this episode, the Krusty Krab ends up going open for 24 hours a day to compete with the Chum Bucket, and Mr. Krabs straight up doesn't allow SpongeBob or Squidward to go home because they have to work 24/7 now. Again, I only leave this as an honorable mention because yes, that's illegal and it violates a ton of labor laws, but it's definitely not as heinous as the other crimes that we've seen committed in this video. Furthermore, Season 4 of SpongeBob was just meh in my honest opinion. The second episode that we checked out reminded me that I also gotta take a sec to shout out my friends in Silverback Gorilla Records. If you follow me on Twitter, you'd know that I have a thing for pretty records from boutique record labels. These guys pressed this legendary album from this little band called Spongecore, and just listen to how badass this is. If you're into deathcore, check it out on YouTube. This album is straight up fire, and it's a testament to how awesome fair use is on YouTube, just saying. All in all, I gotta say, Mr. Krabs is a colorful character. It blows my mind in many ways that so many people in town just support and trust him when he's done so many people around him wrong so many times, but I guess it is what it is. We've seen Mr. Krabs commit many crimes throughout the series, and these two episodes are just a few examples that came to mind when plotting this video. But what do you think? Do you remember more episodes where Mr. Krabs broke the law? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and maybe share it with a friend. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.